Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and no prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
And I've found that in my parenting journey, I really hold on to those who are like-minded. And I've created this whole kind of community of friends from scratch, which is great. And I think that in my adulthood, I like finding those who are on the same wavelength as me, that understand that we have to prioritize our children and make sure that there's a parent that's, there that they can turn to. You kind of have to sit with that because sure, your friendships evolve, but it's so great when you find your tribe. Parenting shouldn't be done in silos. And we're already with our nuclear family and unit so much. So that's helped me.
There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our Mom Sense and Dad Sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to a very special episode of That's Total Mom Sense. Today, I'm putting myself in the hot seat and I'm having 2 very seasoned co-hosts join me, and they're going to be asking me all about my journey in launching That's Total Mom Sense and what I do now. Priya is an entrepreneur, a mother of 2, and a champion of women around the world. She loves work, life, and everything in between. She founded and operated India's largest childcare business, won many awards for her work, including Woman Entrepreneur of the Year, Young Turk, FT 1000 for Asia, and Red Herring Asia, to name a few. And today, she is Bright Horizons Chief Digital and Transformation Officer. She also has a bachelor's degree in engineering, an MBA from London Business School, and a unique perspective on what fits work and life together. Paul is the founder of the Company of Dads, the first platform dedicated to creating community and resources for lead dads. Its mission is to help lead dads who are the go-to parents at home and allies to moms at work. It helps them feel less isolated and more confident in the choices they have made. As a lead dad himself, Paul understands intimately the joys, frustrations, isolation, and reticence around talking about being a lead dad. It's a role that is growing in numbers, but is far from normalized. And he began his career as a New York Times columnist and is the aficionado on golf as well. So Paul and Priya, I'm so happy to have you join me. I'm excited that my audience gets to know more about Bright Horizons, as well as your podcast, Work-Life Equation. Definitely go subscribe to that show.
Hello, Kanika, and hello, everyone. Priya and I are super excited to be doing a bit of a takeover and hosting today's episode.
And Kanika, when the Bright Horizons team met with you at the Mom 2.0 conference, we just knew we had to get together and also get your listeners to hear your story. You were doing these on-site interviews and you were the official podcast partner for the event. So we're really excited to turn the tables and allow your audience to hear your story.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love working with fellow podcasters.
What inspired you to start the podcast? That's Total Mom Sense.
Sure. I always say that, motherhood didn't end my career. It catalyzed a new one. I began in media. I always knew I wanted to be a television anchor. Growing up with my immigrant parents, we always had the news on. So whether it was Walter Cronkite or Peter Jennings, Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, Connie Chung. That's who we grew up with as household names and almost like friends in our home who told us what was happening in the current affairs. And so I would watch them and thought, I have to get into this business. And so I pursued broadcast journalism. I earned my master's from University of Miami, did my undergrad at Boston University in international relations before that. And my first job was with CNN International. I was stationed in India. And it's funny, my parents will say, this is all backwards. We immigrated from India to the US and you're going back. But I thought this is such a unique, opportunity. I never did a study abroad. And so I got a chance to go back and I do speak Hindi. I can read and write the language and I'm fluent. And so I was able to, work on the ground there and still disseminate the news for this English medium channel. And I covered everything from, the 26/11 terror attacks to Slumdog Millionaire's sweeping win at the Oscars, BAFTAs, Golden Globes. And I covered all things human interest as well. So I took that know-how and, in production, I parlayed it into my role as an editor-in-chief for an online retailer. I started my own digital marketing firm. So I've pivoted a lot in the media landscape. But after I had my 3 kids in 18 months, that was the jolt that I needed. I had twins, boy-girl twins, and my younger son, in one full swoop. And I found myself drowning. And I was lucky to have support. We had a night nurse. I had a nanny helping me. I was breastfeeding them around the clock. And I felt like I needed an outlet. And so I started listening to podcasts in 2017 and 2018. And I felt like this space was bereft of a show that is illuminating, inclusive, and inspiring. And so that's what led me to launch That's Total Mom Sense. I thought I want to be an uplifting resource for parents, make sure that we hear stories from moms and dads alike and give them tangible takeaways because sure, we can vent to our friends and we have tons of WhatsApp threads for that. But what about getting the downloads in a half an hour episode, feeling like that changed not just my day, but my entire mindset and, maybe broadly my life, that one episode. So that's the mission.
What is one of the most inspirational stories or advice you received from your podcast guests, given that is part of your motto and ambition for the show?
I've had so many luminaries on. I loved hearing from Chelsea Clinton, growing up in DC. I remember her because we're around the same age and she was at Sidwell Friends where I had some family friends also attended her school. And I just thought, wow, what was it like being first daughter, growing up in the White House? I mean, from age 12 to 20, the most formative years in a person's life, she was living there and, in a fishbowl. So to be able to interact with her and now, kind of gabbing as fellow moms of 3 was amazing. And she's really a prolific author and she's written so many children's books. And I loved how she spoke to how kids can prepare for a sibling. She has this book called Welcome to the Big Kids Club. And though she's an only child, she, kind of had that unique perspective that I want to make sure I'm preparing my child that there is a baby brother, baby sister on the way and how that kind of changes the family dynamic. So I thought that was really interesting. Paul, I know you're an only child, so something that you would appreciate, especially you're a father of 3 and 2 now. So it's very parallel lives. And then another one was Robin Ward. She leads Founder Forward and is an investor. And she talked about how parenting is leadership. She said it's so important that as the co-CEO of your household, you need to have your kids buy in because you don't want to be that mean boss. You're not trying to set up this totalitarian setup in your home where it's like, these are the rules and what I say goes and all of that, because you're going to get that pushback, even from a 2-year-old. When you can kind of give them choices, or I say to look out for the 3 A's: agency, autonomy, advocacy. Give your kid, the opportunity to do all those things. And now you're their ally. And you don't want to be too permissive. There's obviously, has to be rules and boundaries in place. I'm all about that. Making sure that they have some skin in the game. They have a stake in the household. We have family meetings like that. That's important. That was a really key takeaway for me.
You're right. I am an only child and I have 3 daughters, and there are moments where I'm like, I just want to have one of them at a time. Like I just want to focus time, because sometimes it is, and when I hear that phrase mom sense, in my house, we often talk about intuition, which is the positive side of it. But then we also talk about, some sort of animal imagery that's chaotic. We're running a goat rodeo. This is a monkey show. We're trying to herd cats, when that phrase mom sense, and I know on your website you talk about dad sense, it can be both the positive of the sort of learnings we have as parents, the intuition we have, but it can also be, not so much the negative, but the nonsense of it all. Sometimes we, laugh about it afterwards. Sometimes like, oh my, I cannot believe this goat rodeo I'm running here. When you think of some of the big takeaways from your years of doing this amazing podcast, the big takeaways around how people, not only got through the nonsense, but learned from it and used it as a teachable moment for themselves, for others, but also for their kids. What are a couple that stand out for you?
At the onset, parenting puts your marriage through the ringer, for sure.
Yeah. There was all 3 of us laughing.
Yes, there's this great podcast that I was listening to. It was Conan O'Brien interviewing, our first lady at the time, Michelle Obama. He says, marriage, kids after marriage, it's like when you're putting a BMW through a crash dummy test. And it's like, there's spokes flying off, like those car seats are going everywhere. Like it's just, the car is just all over the place. That's what it's like. That was a takeaway on my end, not someone I've interviewed on the show. I do hope to have both of them on. They're on my wish list for sure. But I think that's something that I've really held on to. It's like making sure that we preserve our identities, our marriage, the unit that we are. And I feel like that trickles down to the kids for sure. We have to kind of model what we want them to imbibe. So it's very much it's not the do as I say, not as I do. That's not going to work. They will call you out on that.
And then there's this 4th pillar, right? There's work as well. So you have yourself, you have the unit, you have the kids, and then there's work. So what are some practical strategies for balancing, and how do you do this between, keeping the 3 balanced and being a successful entrepreneur?
Yes, of course. I think time management is key. I don't know what I'm doing every day until I look at my Google Calendar. I have, time blocks for everything. Recording, for instance, like I try to batch record as much as I can. So there are days that I'm recording multiple episodes or intros or what have you at a time. And that way I feel like that was, optimization. And I was very efficient with that because you have to be camera ready. And then there might be a day that I, make sure to get that workout class in and then go to Costco. You have to kind of give yourself that leeway because we have to, really be productive in a short span of time. It's between like 8 to 3. Those are my working hours. And then I turn into a pumpkin because I have to go pick up my kids. But you get very, very mindful and almost like unapologetic about it. Like, these are my hours. This is when I have a hard stop. And then you carve time for yourself. I mean, our episode that we recorded on work-life equation, we spoke about that, if you like to take a walk or want to play a round of golf, like you don't have to wait for Saturday to do that. I think it's so important to make sure that you fill your cup. You can't fill from an empty cup as a caregiver. So give yourself those, the time to do that on the weekdays and find those times that you're most productive and, really optimize on that.
I love to hear you talking openly about working 8 to 3. At the Company of Dads, we branded that a care shift. And we talk about how a few companies have been able to adopt this, one big financial services company have adopted. And it's so powerful for parents because it gives you that moment to really focus and do that synchronous work when you have to talk to people like Priya and me at a normal time. It's not like you're only working 8 to 3. You're sending emails surely at night. You're sending emails surely in the morning. You're sending stuff and arranging stuff, on the weekends. So this happens. But one of the things you've talked about in the past is focusing on the positive aspects of motherhood rather than complaining about the challenges. I'm a glass half full guy, but how has adopting that mindset shaped your journey and how have you been able to share it with other people going through something that is joyful at times, but also really difficult?
Yes, I think it's so important to have an, optimistic view on it. In fact, I had just read a book by a friend of mine, Dr. Sue Varma, called Practical Optimism. And reading it, she said that, there is a segment of our population that is just hardwired this way. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. Because you can't let yourself get swept away by the challenges. And they're endless. At every juncture of child rearing, we're faced with something new and there's no denying. I mean, I had struggles during postpartum as well, especially after the twins. I felt like the sleep deprivation and the change in my body and hormones, I had those lows. It's not that I never felt them. When I find that outlet, and it could be, talking to friends, making sure I have a check-in with my husband. I even called a postpartum hotline that my pediatrician gave me. It was like a free mental health hotline where I got to speak to someone for hours on end, just vent. Yeah. Then I would feel like, this is really liberating. You literally, feel the sigh of relief. And then I get back to thinking clearly and I'm like, this is a blip in time. Mm-hmm. When I had, 3 diapers of all different sizes and 3 different colored bottles, there was like a baby blue, a white, and a lavender on the tree, that tree that you hang the bottles from to dry. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just was like, this is nonstop. But I look back and I have rose-colored glasses now. It was so fun, seeing them grow up and crawling and playing and the swaddles. It was the cutest phase. And, now that I have 7-year-olds and a 5-year-old, I tend to relish that, this is, just one point in time that I want to hang on to and enjoy because soon they're going to be 18 and 17, 35 and 34. And I want to really enjoy every phase. And so I think just knowing how finite it all is makes you appreciate what you have in the moment.
I agree so much. And I think of my oldest is almost 15. And I'll say this to her forever. And, she'll cringe because that's what you do when you're a teenage girl and your dad says cringy things to you. But, I used to hold her in the swaddle, in the crux of my arm. Her head would be in my hand and she would fit before the bend of my elbow. And men, have started complained about changing diapers and all this. I'm like, man, that's the easiest thing in the world. That's just like, you're just there, you do it, you get it done. It becomes, more complicated, more interesting at times. But, you talked about rose-colored glasses. The only thing I don't have rose-colored glasses about is we used to have this glider that we bought. And it was this greenish glider and for a pink room. And all my kids are spitter-uppers. And it was the thing, and I slept in it and it was uncomfortable. I was like, man. And my wife says, what are we going to do? It's like, we are going to throw that thing out. Like, we shouldn't, we can't give it to anybody else. We can't give that thing to anybody else. It's awful. No, we're going to throw that thing out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think we all have those moments. I felt the same about my pump. I mean, I breastfed all three for like a
Yeah.
year, and I was like, I want to go office space on this pump.
So we had a
I
we had a
didn't. But
freezer. We had a separate freezer for all the milk to be stored. And the thing I love more than anything to drink in this world is coffee. Like, if I drink, I could give up wine, that'd be fine. I wouldn't really like to give up water, but I would never give up coffee. And there's something happened a week or so ago, and there are like 4 or 5 like Yetis of coffee in the refrigerator for iced coffee. And my wife looks at me and says, "Why do you have so much coffee?" I said, "Laura, this is like, remember the breast milk in the freezer? That's what this is for me. When I get really tired, I reach in, I get my iced coffee, it's ready to go." And we have,
yes, it's my fuel. Oh my
um,
God, that's awesome.
what keeps you motivated during both the days that, are wonderful? It's easy to stay motivated in a wonderful day, but what keeps you motivated through those more demanding days and to do it, year after year after year?
I think, Paul, you and I are so privileged. We do what we love. Not a day in my life feels like work because I get to interview the most phenomenal people. And whether I'm doing the marketing around it or scripting or what have you, or going, on site for a speaking engagement and connecting with community in person, like all of it's fun. I would do it all for free. It's like the most rewarding thing ever. And then the same goes for parenting. Again, you have these challenges. You're going to always be thrown for a loop, but again, I'll take it for the joys. And I would say, like, if I have to come up with some hacks, I make sure that I do have some time to myself. So I set the alarm an extra 15 minutes early, and I make it's such an Indian thing, but I have masala chai in the morning, and I'll watch it bubble up. Sometimes I'm listening to a podcast, or I'll play really soothing music or meditation sounds as I'm doing that. And then I jump into the tasks of getting the lunch boxes and the backpacks and, breakfast ready, and we're off. But I think just giving myself that time at the top of the day, I feel like, okay, I've taken care of myself. I'm good. Let's go.
Yeah, I wonder, like, some of those things that bring us back to our lives before we were parents, before we were spouses, kind of that sweet spot. Is that because we had talked on the Work Life Equation podcast about, it's a wonderful outlet for me to hit golf balls, and it makes me think about my grandfather, who was so instrumental in my life. And when you have these moments that are, they're not really ceremonial, that's overstating it, but they kind of get your brain to a different spot and a different perspective. Is that what, making the tea and watching it bubble up, is that what it is for you?
100%. It's ritual, and it reminds me of my grandmother. I would see her do this when she visited us for 6 months out of the year, or when she was in India, and sprinkling in the tea leaves, the cardamom, smelling the aromas, hearing the sounds. Yeah, I think it just takes me back to this happy time, with my grandma.
This makes me think, like, you've been such a leader through your podcast and the digital age for moms, but for parents in general. What impact has that had, or what influence has that had on how you parent, or perhaps, the parent that you've become versus perhaps the parent you thought you might have been before you had children?
As the product of immigrant parents, I mean, my parents immigrated with me when I was 2 from India. It kind of worked within the confines of what they had, and it was very much a survival mode. But I take the good and leave out the bad. I feel like there is an element of cycle breaking. There's certain things that I don't want to do where they were too strict, too overbearing. But then there are other things that they did teach me, like grit and resilience. And I definitely want to pass that on. I think that's really important. And I've found that in my parenting journey, I really hold on to those who are like-minded. And I've created this whole like kind of community of friends from scratch. And I think that in my adulthood, I like finding those who are on the same wavelength as me, that understand that we have to prioritize our children and make sure that there's a parent that's, there that they can turn to. You kind of have to sit with that, because sure, your friendships evolve, but it's so great when you find your tribe. Parenting shouldn't be done in silos, and we're already with our nuclear family and unit so much. So that's helped me.
When you think about the role that your husband, the father of your three children, that he plays in your life, in your career, in your family, what is that role? How do you guys, trade things off? How do you decide who's going to do what? And, when you think about, the main components of his role, what are they?
Oh my gosh, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. I feel so fortunate to have found Sunil, because he really is my ally and partner and ride or die for life. I feel like he's made me a better person. And we are just so 50-50. We split things up and lean into our strengths. I think that's so important. I didn't have that growing up. My dad kind of happily took the back seat, was a little more absentee. My mom didn't mind it. And I think that kind of weighs heavily on kids, and especially for me with the father-daughter relationship. Like, you want to have very active parents in your life. And so that's who we are. Sunil loves kind of taking the lead on sports. He's very athletic. And so the kids are in everything. And because they're all the same ages, it's pretty easy. We're like, all right, they get lumped together. So they have t-ball and soccer, an intro to tennis starting this weekend. Yeah, we want them in these team sports, and oftentimes they're co-ed, and it's awesome. The twins, Krish and Sohana, are together in school in class, and then they're on the same team for baseball now, and they love it. I love seeing them high five each other and their teammates, and just to have that camaraderie outside the home and like the sportsmanship. I'm like, this is great, and they get that. They get that from their dad. I'm definitely the cook in the house, and somehow Indian food is a mandate, which I have risen to that challenge. And so they get a lot of, dal and chicken curries and all of that. I've learned so much from my mom and mother-in-law. And so I feel like if you asked him that question, he'd be very happy that he doesn't have to do that, and he gets the the meals that he loves. Yeah, we just make sure that we complement each other. And I think another key is to appreciate and have an empathy where the other is coming from. That's where friction often starts. It's like, do you see me? Do you see all the work that I'm doing? Couples really need to have that alignment. And there's times where you get off kilter. It's totally fine. I think COVID was that for us. But when you come back to it, you just feel so seen.
The formative years, and my parents were similar as well, Kanika. My mom stayed at home out of choice, and my father worked. But I think it becomes so formative in how you think. And it was the exact opposite for Sanjay. His mom worked and his father was very supportive. So it's interesting how, as we grow, how much of parenting plays a role and how we look at our own parenting journey. So I'd love to see how our kids think about. I know my boys will turn out to be feminists because they're like, this is the deal. Mom's rule. So
Yes.
it's
If we
very
can
fun.
model it, then this is all they know.
And they'll carry it forward, and hopefully the world will be a more equitable place as a result of it. But I was, the fact that you've lived in many countries like me, I wanted to sort of get a sense of how that's defined you both as a parent, but more importantly as a human.
I love that I got a chance to live in India and, grew up speaking Hindi. And it's something that I am passing on to the kids. And it's funny. It's like, it's definitely a task, because when they were younger, we heard all these nursery rhymes, and, it was just the sing-songy all day long in Hindi. And now that they're in grade school, they just want to speak in English. And you're like, oh man, I gotta hone in here. So they're in a cultural school where they're learning. And I trained in Indian dance in Kuchipudi for 15 years. It just, life comes full circle. My daughter Suhana had seen performances, like old grainy home videos on computer that we digitized, me and my sister performing in the full costume when I was her age. And she said, I want to learn the dance that Mama learned. Yeah. And I just was like, that's great. And so, we found a teacher in New Jersey and we both are taking classes. I'm in my 40s. I'm not, looking to perform and be on stage again. But I do remember as a child how, I had danced multiple times a week, and we had these dance dramas and productions that we'd have to rehearse for months. And it was so much a part of who I am and, where I poured my energy. And I thought, why should I deprive myself in my adulthood? I loved it, and so I'm taking privates and Sohana's in a group class. And I think, modeling that for her too is great. She's like, wow, you're never too old, and if you love dance, then you can continue. And I think that keeps her going. But yeah, it's great to have all these different cultural outlets at our disposal, living in the melting pot that we do.
As someone like you who cheers so many others on and is really uplifting a lot of people, what message would you like to share with both your fellow moms and also parents who are entrepreneurs?
Trust yourself, trust your mom sense and dad sense. I think we second guess ourselves way too much. We have imposter syndrome at work, and am I doing enough as a mom? We tend to compare. At the end of the day, when you are led by your gut instinct and your intuition, no one can derail you. This idea came to me when I had all these people either whispering or full on at the top of their lungs telling me what to do. I had nannies, in-laws, aunties, everybody has an opinion. Do it this way. You're supposed to do this. And I just thought, like, I am getting so inundated here. And I thought, I'm going to trust me. Like, there is no rule book. Parenting to living life, and there is this higher consciousness that we have. If you really trust that, nothing can steer you wrong.
Yeah, I think caregiving is like the first thing we all do as humans, and sometimes we forget, like parenting by Google, parenting by neighbors. So we all have to sort of say, yes, there is some core instinct there, which, is nature that we have to trust. So that's great advice.
Thank you. Data gathering is important. I do, as a journalist, I'm all about like read the
Let's
books,
get all
ask
the
the
information.
questions. Yes. But then after you've done that and kind of, downloaded it all and thought, okay, then you just chart your own path.
Well, it's been an absolute privilege talking to you and getting to know you so much better. I'm sure your own listeners have gotten to know you a lot better through this conversation. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to host and interview you today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun for both Priya and me to be here talking to you, Kanika. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. This was such a joy. I'm so glad that I got to chat with you too. And we're just so aligned. And this is just such a fun chat to reintroduce myself to my audience. And I'm excited that they're going to now follow Work-Life Equation too. So subscribe to their show and learn more about Bright Horizons. I love our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some great takeaways from our conversation. Join my community by logging on to that'stotalmomsense.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast, wherever you listen, and be sure to rate and review. On socials, my handle is at Kanika Chadda Gupta on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and X. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My episode videos are on YouTube and YouTube podcasts with highlights on YouTube Shorts. Write to me at that'stotalmomsense@gmail.com. My team and I read all your pitches and feedback and are so glad to be in touch. Remember, always trust your mom sense and dad sense. Stay strong, super parents. See you soon.